Hello, welcome to Norwegian Newcomers, the podcast where you are hearing fragments of lives of Norway immigrant population. Today, my guest is Jonathan. This is exciting for me as every time when I'm hosting someone today we just saw each other for the first time, and accidentally it happens that it's on inauguration in USA, since that I can say you are our newcomer from United States. Welcome to our Norwegian Newcomers family, and please, for our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan, as you just heard, and I am a 23-year-old Norwegian American who was born in Norway, but grew up most of his life in the US. So I have not really many fond memories in Norway, or many memories whatsoever, for that being here in Norway. So I guess this is my great return, if you will.
And you belong to newcomers.
Yes.
Since you were born in Norway, but when you were one year? Or?
Yeah, just about 1 year. A 1 year old, and then my parents decided to move back to the US, basically. So my mother, she's American, and then my father, he's Norwegian himself, yeah. So my mom, she came to Norway to meet my father, and that's kind of, they hit it off. They had, my brother and I, and they basically moved back to the US. I guess my brother was about 5, and I was about 1.
Okay.
Just about, yeah.
Can I hear about your life in America?
Absolutely, yeah. So basically, I was, my parents moved us back to the US, and then for unfortunate reasons, my parents divorced. And I grew up in the US, while my brother basically grew up in Norway with my aunt and uncle. So I got to live with my grandmother in California, where then we moved to Mississippi for about a few years. Then I moved to, interestingly enough, when I was about in middle school, I think about 14 years old, I moved 1 year back to Norway. And then I came back to the US because of a complicated matter in our family, basically, because we were trying to transfer custody to my mother again.
Yeah. So it was kind of because of the legal reasons that you moved. Then you lived for 1 year in Norway, and then the legal things were settled, and then you were back to USA.
Pretty much, which is really it's such a strange thrown in, thrown out experience.
It is, and that's why, can you recall in that 1 year when you were 13 years old, can you recall, because that was actually the first time, your first Norwegian experience,
if anything, right? We moved into Vestby, so not so far away from Oslo, maybe about an hour and a half away. And I was in middle school, or elementary, kind of going into middle school. And there was actually another American inside the class with me as well. So it kind of made it really, really special because I had kind of someone to relate with. He was also half Norwegian going into this Norwegian class. But everyone was, so nice. For a person who only experienced the US, right, and kind of American food, American everything, I mean, it's obviously a big culture shock going into Norwegian lifestyle, Norwegian going outdoors with your classmates and everything, doing ski trips, doing nature tours, camping, and you're like, I've never done any of this in the US. This
so
is not
everything was new, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and it was so nice. It was so refreshing. But I lived here for about a year, and after everything was sorted out, I just moved back to the US with my mom for the.
But tell me, when you knew that, okay, now I'm going back to USA, home, or what was the feeling? Can you?
So for me, I was really excited, actually. Not because not because I hated Norway or that I was moving back to the US. Because I was a kid, I think I was excited because I was like, oh my gosh, I can have normal pancakes again.
Okay, so pancakes. That's the first thing, that's the perspective of teenager boy. Pancakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you didn't like what?
We had, the Norwegian pancakes, a pannkake, just the really small, really slim, it's not as fluffy as the American pancakes, right? So But beyond that, the reason why I was so excited was because I got to reunite with my mom again. So that because we got separated once my parents got divorced, unfortunately, and it was so nice that got to reunite with her, and I was actually going to live with her and my stepfather, basically for the first time, and so excited for that I just forgot everything else. Family, anything else that I had here in Norway, even friends or all of the good experiences, just because I was so laser focused on mostly my mom and my stepfather.
Yeah, which is totally understandable. It's the biggest thing in that moment.
It was so,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
But then when you were back in USA, you continue with the education. What was the life in that?
Yeah, so I had a normal, I guess, American teenager lifestyle, I guess, if you will.
How that can you describe?
Yeah, it was just middle school for me, and then it was go to school, do your homework, play some video games afterwards, and not much else. Yeah.
As a hobby or things that in a free time is video games.
Pretty much. I would say too many, so much so that it might be a detriment now. Like it might be such a bad thing now because I play way too many video games. Like I have a gaming computer and like all the consoles and everything. I spent too much money on all that. I realize that, but I also really enjoy it. So
can you recall in that time, since when you moved back, of course, excited because the really important life thing happened, live with your mom. But did you have any connection with Norway?
Yes. Yes. So my brother, he grew up here in Norway his whole life with my aunt and uncle, who were so grateful for taking care of him, and like my grandmother there as well. And every day, I seriously look back every day. I'm so grateful for what my aunt and uncle has done for my brother and my grandmother. Seriously, I don't know what else would happen if they weren't in the picture. But so I had my family here, my aunt and uncle and my brother and my grandmother who lived in Vestby, and also like more family extended from my father's side too. But I didn't have much of a connection with them, basically, as I did with my aunt and uncle and my brother. Yeah.
So in that time, did your brother coming to America or? No.
So they actually, it's funny because before the year I lived in Norway, they did visit me in the US basically when I was living with my grandmother at the time. And they actually invited me once they were on vacation to Norway. So they were, they're like, oh, maybe we should experience Norwegian lifestyles and also some other things. And that's kind of the whole reason behind the legal reasons too as well. When I was little and my brother and I got separated, I have never seen him until basically 6th grade when they came over here for vacation. So that was my first time remembering meeting him because I was so young, at the time that I don't remember anything from that time. But when my brother came and visited with my aunt and uncle for vacation, that was kind of my first reunion, if you will, or like meeting of my brother. Which was really nice. And then after the fact, when they went back to Norway, they called me when I was in Mississippi and asking, hey, do you think you maybe want to come to Norway and experience it for a week or so, just for, because we miss you so much and everything else like that. And I was obviously, I said, yeah, of course. It's going to be, Norway. International traveler.
Yeah, but what was your friends, for instance, American friends? Did they know when you were mentioning, I'm going to Norway, I will...
When I was little, you mean?
Yeah.
At that time, I don't think I was the most popular in school. Because in my childhood, I moved around quite a bit, actually. So I definitely jumped around to different schools quite often. So much so that I don't have like any childhood friends from that period, basically. So at the kids at the time, I was like, I'm going to Norway. And like I literally told every person that I met. Because at the time I was living in Mississippi with my grandmother, and like in Mississippi, not much happens. There's not a lot of opportunity because it's kind of in the South, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of businesses or other things like that. If you're gonna work, you're gonna work within the community, and more than likely, you're gonna stay there. Like there's not a lot of movement opportunity to leave Mississippi just because it's so hard, and like minimum wage there is awful. So you
really
can't
tough
really.
life.
Yeah.
Can we say the whole life that you spent in Mississippi, the situation was kind of bad economically, or
Just about. I mean, like I was lucky. My grandmother, she was a nurse in her when she was working, leave, so she had quite a nice retirement, and we had a really nice home. So I was never like never had like or neglected or like I've always had food, and I was so lucky to have a roof over my head and everything else like that, and a loving family. If anything,
the most important, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was really, so she took care of me in Mississippi. And even though there wasn't a lot of opportunity, there, we did live off of my grandmother's like retirement basically. But I was also lucky to have family in so many other places, because I also had a god family in California, who aren't really directly related to me, but, there were friends of my mother who were connected to me through, I guess, spirit, if you will.
But then, did you have the wish to travel, to go anywhere from Mississippi in that time?
Well,
or
very much so when I was in Mississippi. Hate is a strong word, but I think it was very close to hate
Really?
for me. Yeah, just because at least when I was living in Mississippi, I was in elementary school. I was not very popular in elementary school because I kind of had an accent, right? Or like a Californian accent, if you will, or even some type of. Basically, I was not from Mississippi.
Yeah,
You can tell.
And you can hear that
In an instant, in a heartbeat, yeah. And that kind of made me really unpopular with the kids because I went to an all black school, so an all African American school, basically. And yeah, the children there did not like my accent as much, and I was kind of an outcast, if you will, unfortunately, yeah, because of that. Mm.
And what kind of experience? So if you want to...
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, it was, I have very fond memories, especially now, because I identify myself as homosexual. But I remember all the little kids in the school, like they're always, even though, especially at that age, you might not be, you might not know what your sexual orientation is just yet. You're still discovering yourself. You're still, a lot of kids caught onto the trend of calling me gay boy and everything. And they meant it in the harshest of ways because like they kind of, especially at that time still, even though it's only been such a short period where like, gay people are more accepted nowadays, or even queer people, LGBTQ plus A in general are more accepted nowadays. But they were very, they meant it in a very harsh tone, But I mean, if someone called me, gay boy now, I'm like, yeah, that's me. But yeah, back then it was obviously not the nicest thing, and I never really had any friends and things like that. And at that time, since I was living with my grandmother, right, I didn't really know what happened to the rest of my family because we were kind of just disconnected from everyone else. Mm. So I was, wondering about like, where did my parents go? Where did, other people, my aunt and uncle, where's my brother? And things like that. Which, and for this sad beginning becomes a happier.
That's part of
part of progress. But so at the time it was really, really lonely, definitely, for sure, especially with the kids, being not as accepting at the time.
Before you moved to Norway, how old you were? Because it's recently, I should say.
Yes, no. Well, I was about, I think I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. When I moved to Norway. I moved here on Christmas Eve and I remember that because I keep telling, I'm the gift to Norway. A little fun thing, but it's very memorable to like know when you moved here to Norway, Christmas Eve.
But what was the intro for it? Did you decide? What was the reason? How you came?
That's actually, I think, kind of a quirky or like weird story to recall on, because the reason why I decided to move back was because I went on vacation here. So with my best friend, I decided to come here on vacation just for like a week or something, which is a very short time for someone you haven't seen in 8 years. I realized after the fact. But it was just, I think at the time was all I could, kind of afford in terms of like job and working and taking time off and things like that. The other week, we came here, met my family after 8 years. It was very nice. The air was really fresh. That's one thing I always remembered. As a kid, whenever I was breathing air in California, it's really stuffy, but I didn't ever notice anything. But then when I visited Norway, when my family invited me over for about a week, the air was so fresh and it was so clear. And that's one thing I definitely noticed. Absolutely.
From polluted places coming here,
Yeah.
you can really feel it.
And that was the one thing I was actually really looking forward to when I was coming back here on, just to vacation, was to take a deep breath of air again and to see if it was actually the same way I felt when I was younger. And it was. It was so amazing. I was like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. I took, just... And it was such a throwback to like my childhood. And I was like, I'm back.
So that was something that you kept from the first time when you were a teenager and coming visiting our air. And yeah.
That was, I guess, one of my fond memories of Norway.
Yeah, that week, how you spent that week, vacation week after?
We did so many things. So if I recall, I think we went to like Skretteberg, which is like the military island. And then we spent some time in Oslo, just around there, just kind of walking around, seeing the opera, doing the whole like tourist route, if you will, of all the nice buildings in Oslo. And then I think we went to the ski jump, like the
Colin?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's about it, actually. So we kind of spread out the days, and we spent a little bit in Vestby as well, just kind of around the house. And when the time was coming to leave back, it was obviously really sad, and I was thinking, this is really nice, and I kind of miss it, actually. And I think I want to move back here. Also, this is actually really interesting too. Before I came to visit vacationing in Norway, because I do have dual citizenship, which I'm very lucky to have, like American and Norwegian. But I was at risk of losing my Norwegian citizenship because there's an interesting law that says once you turn 22, if you have not lived in Norway for about 2 years, you're at risk of losing it. You will lose your citizenship. Yeah. I didn't know about that. Off of a whim of talking to a coworker, we were just, chatting about, dual citizenship and, how I was lucky to have it. And, I recognize I'm very lucky to have dual citizenship. I know it's really tough, especially meeting so many expats here in Norway. Thank goodness. But when I was looking at the rules, like I was just reading quickly because my coworker's like, I'm pretty sure like, Norway doesn't like dual citizenship. And I was like, I think they're okay with it. I think it's the US that's not okay with it. I looked it up online and, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm only 8 months away from turning, that year.
Yeah.
And I'm at risk of losing my citizenship out of nowhere. Because I've not been here in Norway for 2 years. I've never lived here for 2 years in a row. Never, ever. So there's a way to keep your citizenship, but you have to go through this very long process of like getting a bunch of documents about like, from your Norwegian parent. It has to be from your Norwegian parent. So like their passport, the birth certificate, your birth certificate, like proof that you lived in Norway for at least a year. Mm-hmm. Oh, geez, what else? I think like your ID number and other things like that, like your other citizenship or like proof of like identification of who you are if you have it and things like that. So a whole slew of documents. I went to the San Francisco consulate and for the Norwegian San Francisco consulate, and I basically submitted my documents there, hoping that they pass it. And a few weeks, like a month later, they luckily passed it. So I got to keep my citizenship scot-free.
Yeah. How it looks when you realize that you actually want to go back, that you want to live in Norway.
Yeah, it was actually while I was on vacation in Norway that I realized I wanted to come back. Even though I had literally no idea what I'm going to do here, how I'm going to do it, anything else like that. I was staying in my cousin's room because my aunt so nicely put me into my cousin's room, the same one who took care of my brother and my grandma and things like that. So we were staying with them, and I remember like waking up and kind of just looking out the window of like this really nice beautiful sunny morning, very calm, very tranquil, quiet, and I remember I was like, this is so nice. And the same thing, I took that deep breath of air again, and I was like, yeah, I want to move back. I think I want to move, to Norway.
You had the moment. You had the
Yeah.
moment when you actually realized that you want to.
Absolutely. And the thing too was, I realized, I have, a dual citizenship, and I was like, what's stopping me? Why not do it? I don't want to wait before something, holds me back, or like maybe I meet someone who like is my lifelong partner, or like I buy a house there or get a really nice job or something, I don't want something to keep me stuck from not experiencing this opportunity that was given to me in the first place. Why would I miss out on that? So kind of realizing all those things, for me, it was like the next logical step was to move to Norway and try it out.
What's your now sense of home?
I still ask myself that same question. I actually get that question, in a different format of like, oh, but do you like the US or do you like Norway more, or are you planning staying here for a long term? Are you planning to move back soon? Are you planning on doing whatever? And I just kind of say, I don't know. I honestly don't, because I don't think I planned that far ahead just yet, which may be reckless in the near future, who knows. But for me at the time, it just made a lot of sense approaching the more reckless side of this scenario. That day when I, woke up and decided I wanted to move back, I when I saw my aunt next, I told her, I think I want to move back to Norway. And she's like, great, when? And I was like, in December, which was literally 6 months away from the time that I told her that. So I was like, in 6 months, I'm going to plan, a whole life change to Norway, and I still don't know what to do.
So, and if possible, you did it.
Yeah, I'm here. And you can do it too, folks.
But did that, for your family here, I guess that support was
yes,
important.
Absolutely. I think, honestly, if I were not to have family here, and I guess more of an emotional connection here in Norway, I don't think I would have that need to move back as much, really, as well. Because I think one of the biggest reasons for me to move back here to Norway was, one, to besides losing my citizenship and me being scared of losing out on an opportunity of moving here, but also because I realized literally the last time I saw my family was 8 years ago, and then before that was pretty much never, so I never really got to spend a lot of time around my family. And I kind of felt, I was really saddened by that, because my family in general, like even the ones in the US, are just very separated from each other. And I really wish that, would change. And I really wish that we were to, kind of come together, but burn bridges and cut ropes and things like that, kind of just keep us separated for some reason. But unfortunately, I'm that connection in between those those bridges, because even though parts of my family won't talk to each other, maybe I'm kind of the person in the center.
Yeah, yeah. If I would ask you now the differences between American and Norwegian society, what would you point it?
That's also a really hard question, and also a very common question, I would say, too. I feel like, honestly, like whenever you meet another expat, right, your first questions are like, oh, why'd you move here?
I guess it's the interesting still. I'm finding that I think it's interesting for everyone, even for newcomers, others, to hear others' experience, or for Norwegians to hear direct from us what we are thinking or struggling or lacking or so give your
my honest interpretation. Yeah, so I would say in terms of differences between I would say a lot of people are really nice here, right? Norwegians, very kind-hearted. My interpretation of your standard Norwegian is kind of doing the right thing, or like you kind of having like the heart in the right place of, if it comes down to the decision of doing something right or wrong, I honestly feel like they tend to take the moral high ground of things, which I really respect, them to do. At the same time, I also, you always hear the common, oh, Norwegians are very distant and
Cold,
very, very much so. Because even if you were to go to a party, right, let's say, and maybe there's some drinks involved, and maybe you guys are hanging out and you're kicking it off, and you're like, wow, these people are so awesome. Maybe we can hang out another time and everything, and you never hear them, from them again. It's so fun. You thought you guys had a great connection and everything. Nope.
But no, tomorrow is
tomorrow's a different story.
Deleted.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's not because they dislike you or anything, but it's just I think you tend to become, I guess, a little bit more loose when you have a little bit more drinks in your system and everything else like that. But that doesn't mean you're friends. It just means you're having a nice time at the moment.
You need some time to figure out that, to get used, or?
I think, I think I had maybe about 4 or 5 parties before before I realized, it's not me per se. Like maybe because I always thought, we had such a nice connection, and we seem we're going to be really cool friends. Maybe we can hang out sometimes and everything. And honestly, I think a few times they felt like I was coming on so strong, so much so that maybe they thought I was actually like interested in them, like in more than a friendly nature, which I wasn't. It was just, I wanted to make like a nice new friend, and I was really excited about it and, outgoing. But I realized after 4 or 5 parties that it's not you. It's the drinks, and it's just kind of how people tend to work. They'll add you on Facebook, but you're not friends.
But do you think, or do you have is it the time? Is it the different mentality? Is it what do you think? Why is?
I think it's time based. I think it's like the more you kind of just spend around the person, and like they kind of just get used to you in a sense. So like now you're kind of just, you're there, you're kind of in their lives, and they're used to seeing you. And then now it's kind of, I guess, the gates open to like actually get to know you more, because you're going to see them tomorrow and probably the next day and everything else like that if you're kind of around their lives, But I think if it was just like a one-off at a party or meeting someone on the bus and having like a random conversation, I don't think there's much to be expected after that point. But I will say that I have met a couple people, like one person who was just a shopkeep kind of. Mm-hmm. And we actually kind of hit it off through some demising means. So it was this really nice lady at it's the B Porton, mm-hmm. like next to the central station, yeah. And it's this nice little fancy shop there, and I totally forgot the shop name. But I went inside. We were just looking around with my coworker at the time, and we kind of came up to the shopkeep, who was super friendly, but accidentally dropped my soda that I had all over the floor, and it was really horrible. Yeah, it's so dirty. It's everyone so bad. Seriously. And I was like, I'm so sorry. But you've been super nice about it. And she was like totally accepting of me dropping the soda and everything. We left, but we came back another day, and she was actually working there again. And she's like, I remember you from last time. And I told her, I hope it wasn't the soda. And she's like, partly. But we actually hit it off, and she was like, you guys are so cool. And I was like, oh, thank you. You're really cool too. Do you want to hang out? Like, do you want to just go somewhere? And
she's Norwegian.
Yeah, she was Norwegian.
Okay. Just to point it out.
Yeah. She was totally Norwegian, not an expat at all. But I was like, okay, well, do you want to go to Tusenfryd? Like the theme park. And then she's like, okay, sure, let's do it. So we all went to Tusenfryd and had a, spent a day with
And you're still friends?
So my coworker and her are still friends, but we haven't had as much contact, basically.
Okay, but you were the one who connected.
I think we all had a part, to connect. But in a way, it was still nice. At least, like, there is hope to me.
Is there anything you are missing that you can say, oh, I'm missing from my, again, home or America?
But no. But for things I'm missing in the US, is that what you're going to ask?
Yeah. Is there anything that now, since you are 2 years now living in Norway, that you can find out that there's something I'm really missing? I would like to have that, or to be, or whatever it is?
I think, honestly, it would just be, and I'm going to sound like a really, fatty of a person who likes food too much, but I think it's just kind of like just food, like really food, and I think maybe things to do, right? Or like different experiences that I guess you wouldn't commonly find out here in Norway that maybe I'm more used to back at home. But when you move to Norway, you don't get as much selection, which is, makes sense because it's a smaller population. The majority of your population are, would be Norwegians and also expats from a variety of countries, So even though you have all those variety of countries, it's not as a big population together necessarily, like,
or dominating.
Yeah, a dominating
minority
population.
to say that. Yeah.
Even though, like, when I listened to the intro episode, I was so surprised by, like, the percentage of people who were actually, like, immigrants.
Yeah.
Like, who are
almost million. Yeah.
Which is amazing. Like, because it's not something that you're thinking of, because you're thinking, population of Norway in general, about 5 million, 6 million. And 1 million of that is, immigrators or, like, expats.
Yeah, I was also surprised seeing the fact number. Yeah. And because I agree, that's interesting that you pointed out that you can't see that either. I don't know, what do you think? Is it because there's no minority that it's so dominate, let's say, comparing with others? But, or because Poland and Lithuania, that statistic says, are the biggest minorities in Norway right now. Yeah. So that's and comparing with others, kind of that the numbers are. So I really hope that I will have some guests soon.
Absolutely.
Some guests from Poland or Lithuania, because they are the biggest minority right now in Norway. It would be nice. But comparing, what's the part of this society that you are enjoying the most? You are missing food, okay, with that, or is there's more things you are missing? Please, I interrupted you.
I think that's about it, really. Just like food, and just beyond that, it's just like family and friends and just general experiences that I guess I would, won't be able to kind of get over here. Or like, I guess if one day I'm like, I want to play some, I don't know, arcade games, right? There's maybe like one or two places you can go to versus a majority of places that you have a selection from and you can pick the best one. Like the US is like such a melting pot, even though most people would think of Caucasian or white people. It is a very big mixing pot of so many different cultures and backgrounds and history there that, you have all those things set up already for you to enjoy. But not so much in Norway because it's not a big population. Norway tends to work from inside a lot and things like that. Is my interpretation always. My viewpoint is basically of Oslo, right? So mostly because I haven't really been able to explore anything beyond Oslo and maybe the section all the way to Vestby, which is near Moss and Ski, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I kind of enjoy the smallness of things, really. I think it's charming, actually, that, Oslo, even though it's the biggest city, it's the capital in Norway, it's such a nice thing that it's so small because you can pretty much walk anywhere within 20 to 30 minutes if you wanted to walk. But you can also take public transportation too, but you can walk to a majority of popular hotspots, I would say, within that amount of time.
But in Oslo, I agree, really, everything is close. And the traffic, public transportation is great.
True. And that might be true, because like I said, my only viewpoint is kind of Oslo.
Yeah, but okay, you are living here, and that's valid.
But other things that I like about Norway that I find, I guess what I do like is that I feel like it's more organized in a sense of like digital lifestyles and things like that. I think it's a lot more set up and secure, more for like the citizens' benefit, more than just I guess the government in general, which is really nice. So I think, you're a lot more protected in terms of your information and things like that. You don't have to worry as much versus the US. You have your social security number and you have your maybe, I don't know, credit card numbers and your bank accounts, and they're all like separated from each other. Like you don't have bank ID, you don't have like one of those little clicky buttons or any other security systems. If you're planning on logging into a government website, you usually have a separate, key on each one without any type of second verification method. So like you when you come to Norway and you have like a verification method of like, putting in your phone number or like whatever, it's a lot nicer and a lot more organized and way easier for, the end user versus the US. Yeah. And I think a lot of public areas, are very, really clean. And even if you're, I guess, more rural areas, like when I was living in Vestby or visiting Vestby, even though they're not super rural, they're building town. But like the little kids, my little cousins, they would just pick up trash if they see it on the side of the road, and they want to keep their community clean. Versus in the US, that's not really a thing. It's like, oh, there's trash, you don't pick it up, you don't touch it because it might be tampered with, something gross. I don't know. And that's something I definitely do respect. Like, and that kind of comes back to what I was saying about like the moral high ground of things, like how I tend to feel like Norwegians tend to take the moral high ground of things. See some trash, pick it up, and put it aside. Like, probably leave the place better than how it was when you first arrived. Basically. About other things I like here in Norway, I think it's just nice that you do have a lot more securities in terms of like, your job. If you lose your job, you have something to back you up. If you're working somewhere, you have a pension for you. It's been thought out for you. Kind of, you have health insurance from the get-go when you get your personal number. Everything is so well easy.
Do you see yourself? You mentioned we don't know. Who knows tomorrow what can happen? But is it Norway, Oslo, in your plans for,
For the foreseeable future, I think I am here in Norway, right? Anything can change. And so, like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm not setting any roots. If I planted a tree, it's probably in a pot, not the ground. So I'm not necessarily too sure just yet. But I mean, I am making, kind of building some bricks, on the side of the road because I'm actually learning Norwegian. I'm taking steps to, especially learning Norwegian. You're only going to talk to maybe 6 million people who also understand the language. So it's not a very popular language at all. If you're speaking Norwegian, it's probably in Norway. Or maybe some like of your Scandinavian neighbors, you can understand a little bit of what you're saying. But beyond that, I mean, and I have made friends here, and I also have my family here too that I'm still getting to know. Even though I do feel very close with them, I think there's time fulfills everything. Time is kind of the written tale of all of our histories, and I think I do need more time with my family to actually build on that, if anything. So for the foreseeable future, yes, I'm here in Norway.
But in your social life, are you hanging? Your friends are
majority expats, and like I would say the only Norwegians that I know would be people from work, right? Especially now. So now I'm no longer working at the marketing company, but I'm working in UNICEF with some very lovely Norwegians and some very lovely expats. A couple of expats from India and also from America. Excuse me. And so basically they're really nice too. And I actually got to meet some Norwegians in the workplace, but they were also very outgoing, just like me, because the job that we're in, you need to be very outgoing. So I guess there wasn't as much of a barrier, basically. And also one of them is on a board of international like student committee, so he's also very used to kind of interacting with outsider or like expats. So yeah, but he's Norwegian, so it counts. Yeah.
But it will be. I believe it will. That's that we are here, and it's the way.
Absolutely. And social life too. Right before Corona, at least, or like before it became a really big thing, when it was still kind of small and unknown to the public, though, I did also start my LGBT group. So I started that group mostly because I didn't know a lot of people. The thing was, I was, again, only able to speak English. And for an expat, there's not really a lot of resources, or at least I didn't really find a lot of resources, even though I scoured the internet for LGBT, QIA plus individuals. So I made my own LGBT friend group where we can just kind of go out and people can meet each other and kind of become friends,
That's
within
nice.
the LGBT
Yeah.
community, Maybe you already have your own community and that's great. But if you just want to meet more LGBT friends outside of that, it's so fulfilling. It's really amazing too, just because, you do get to meet a lot of these LGBT individuals and they come and they're like, yeah, I was looking, for some place and I just not able to find any, but then I found yours and, I decided to come and, then sometimes they come back and sometimes they come, more often than that. And it's really nice, because at least you made a connection and they've made a connection. I'm happy as long as one friend was made today, even if it wasn't with me. If someone made a friend with someone else within the group, to me, that's the most amazing thing.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say that I didn't mention, or?
Yeah, actually, one thing on my mind. When I first came to Norway, I thought it was going to be easy, especially for me, right? Because I was like, I already have it in the bag. I'm, Norwegian citizen, privilege coming out, and I thought it was going to be so easy. Like literally, when I was on the plane here, I was thinking, once within the first week, I want like a phone number and I want like an address and I want, a job and things like that. Let's get these things going. No, things take time here, especially if you don't have things already set up for you. If you don't have a bank ID, if you don't have a bank account, if you don't have a phone number, it takes time. In the US, you just, you go to the phone number, you go to the phone store, easy. You go to the bank, easy, same day. But in Norway, phone number, maybe same day-ish. Bank account, it took me 6 months to get an actual bank account, and then an extra month to get a bank ID, which you need for a lot of things, contracts, anything. And then from there, I think getting the apartment, I was lucky to live with a roommate because I didn't have a bank ID just yet. So then we had to put a deposit under my roommate's name because you needed a bank ID. It was just, you needed so many things. But the thing was, when I first got here, I realized, it wasn't going as fast as I thought it was. To me, I chalked that up to disappointment. And I chalked that up to me failing already. I came here and now I'm failing. I obviously didn't have a good enough plan. And now this is going to be awful. Because literally after I came here on Christmas Eve, and it was New Year's, and I was at my brother's girlfriend's place at the time, she was holding a party, which it's not your traditional woo New Year's party. It's more of a social gathering where you have dress suits and everything on. Most people, they tried speaking English, but then they always switch back slowly to Norwegian, and then they only start speaking Norwegian, and then you start slowly being I'm alone. And I'm the only one here who, and now I'm left out and nothing's going my way, and this is awful. So much so, I drove myself to tears, within, on, New Year's Eve or New Year's. And then I think a couple of days afterwards, because I was this is awful so far. If you held out, it's not as bad as you think it is. It's slower than you might be expecting. But things pull through eventually. You just have to wait. That's all. Even just building up a community of friends or family, if you will, because family can be whoever you want them to be, if anything. But it takes time, and that's if anyone were to listen to this, to this episode specifically, and just feels hopeless, it takes time.
Yeah. Jonathan, I'm really glad, and I was excited and so curious to hear your story, to hear all the details while we were having coffee, and before I was forced myself to stop not to ask all the questions. But I'm really glad that you came here and that you shared your story and your experience with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Tusen takk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Mine too. Reminder that we have a homepage, norwegiannewcomers.com, Instagram and Facebook account. Feel free to contact us if you want to become a storyteller.